because you're not going to be there for long. I'm just pandering to the hedonists in the group. All of you, you're all hedonists. You've all discovered your inner hedonist. You're regressing? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this pleasure of lying on the floor, which I denied you yesterday. So revel in it. And maybe what is it that has become so yummy about lying on the back? Now, of course, I'm making a big assumption that it is yummy lying on your back. Some of you still might hate it. So I've got to be careful of my assumptions. Just to spend time with this relationship with the floor and what this relationship offers you. So the floor supports you. It gives you feedback. It's really consistent. Unless you live in Christchurch, I have to be careful about that. And it's kind of non-judgmental, isn't it? Like the floor is just the floor. It's not telling you that your posture is asymmetrical or, you know, that you've got too much tone in your lower back necessarily. I mean, you can interpret its feedback in a pejorative way, but it's not giving feedback in a pejorative way, just telling you, you know, your right sacrum's heavier on the floor than the left or something. It doesn't say that that's a good thing or a bad thing. It just is. And you can take action from the feedback, you know, like some of you keep your knees up, like I do as well, because the floor gives me the feedback that lying straight very quickly is not something that my nervous system can do quickly. So I need a bit of time. So I need to adapt. So I can use the feedback to take care of myself. So maybe what I'm suggesting is that as an FI practitioner, you can be like the floor, you know, flat, slightly hard. You can have a bit of softening, you can have a bit of a mat, but it's consistent. It's kind of impartial. But the feedback, it's on, you know, it's on message, isn't it? We don't do FI on shifting sands. I could flog this metaphor for hours. I can feel it. So I'm going to suppress myself. In the spirit of you conversing with the floor in a conversation that is relevant to you. We've been having some, you know, interesting chats over the years at work in terms of looking at different systems that give feedback. You know, and I've got my fancy video system that gives visual feedback. And what is the difference between that and a mirror? And one of the differences is that a mirror, you see what you want to see because you're so habituated to your mirrored reflection. So people actually often don't see themselves really. They don't see reality in a mirror necessarily. You know, they're looking for their eyebrows, or they're looking for the, you know, whatever it is. So there's a lot of perceptual bias in using a mirror. So I'm quite interested what your perceptual bias is in looking at yourself when the floor is the mirror. So what is the habitual looking? You know, is it the weight on the back of your pelvis? Is it the length of your legs? What do you use the floor mirror to check? You know, is your lipstick on properly? Do your socks match? Like, what is the habitual looking? Do you always look for the pain thing? Like my habitual thing is always looking for the lower back and the height of the lower back. That's my habit. What's your habit? And then conversely, what is it that you don't see? So just like when you look in the mirror, you don't see that, you know, one eye is slightly more closed than the other, because that's how it always is. You just don't see it. What do you know that you don't know particularly well? With something that whenever we say it in an ATM, you go, oh crap, yeah, I always forget that bit. And I can't ask you to pay attention to what you don't know that you don't know, because you don't know that you're not paying attention to it. And in particular, quietly direct your attention to your breathing, about what you know that you know about your breathing and what you know that you often don't know about your breathing. And to remind you some of the things that you know or don't know around, you know, what's the speed of the breath? What's the length of the pause between the in-breath, between the out-breath and the in-breath? And what's the timing of the in-breath? And what's the timing of the out-breath? Maybe there is a pause between the in-breath and the out-breath. And the where of the breathing. So how do you know that you're breathing? What do you feel in your nostrils? Maybe in the back of your throat? In the ribs at the top, the ribs at the bottom of the front of you, the sides, sternum, the belly, the small of the back. What is influenced by the motion of air? What is not influenced by the motion of air? And what's the magnitude? What's the size of that influence? Is it little imperceptible movement of the first ribs or the clavicle? What's the relative magnitude in your belly compared to elsewhere? Sides of the ribs in the armpits. Good. Okay. That's it. I've been kind. You've had the floor. Quietly come up to standing and go to the table, a table, and arrange yourself so that you're kneeling and that you can lie over the table. And I think maybe we've got an extra table. Oh no, we haven't. Okay, so if possible, I need 2 people to a table as much as possible, because you'll need a little bit of space on either side of you. And can you position yourselves today so that once again your knees are under your hips and that your sacrum is relatively flat? So what would that feel like, look like? So your back is neither arched or rounded, it's quite neutral. I can't wait for Kat to lie down onto the table in front. I can't wait for you to lie down over the table. So yeah, just rest for a moment while everybody's getting ready. And as you're lying on the table, you can notice you're breathing in this position. Oh yes, sorry, you can use this table. That's a bit, how indulgent of me that I was sitting on a whole table all by myself and I can sit on a stool. Sorry, team, that's lack of awareness in action there. You can move it onto the carpet if you want. Now, it looks like there will have to be 3 on 1 or 2 tables for now. You just have to love each other a little bit. You right? They're all being, yeah, no, yeah, Jenny's just giving an FI, otherwise we would have enough. No. So we just need 1 table where 3 people can be a little bit, those 2 want you. It's probably, yeah, that's it. Just do 2 on one side, 1 on the other. Okay, and have your head turned one way just for while you're resting. And quietly notice your breathing in this position. Yep. No, not necessarily. So today your pelvis is a little bit, it doesn't matter for now, but ultimately the instruction is that your sacrum is flat, parallel to the table. So you're not so much hooked over the table today. Yeah. But don't get too fussed, because now everybody just please stand on your knees and have your knees a few centimeters away from the table, maybe 4 centimeters or so back. That's it. So that your hips are about 4, if your hips are over your knees and your hips are about, 4 centimeters or so from the table. And very slowly begin to bring your hip joints towards the table and back again. So yeah, on your knees. And so there's a, kind of a 4 centimeter gap. So you're standing on your knees, standing up on your knees. So your heads are up in the air, standing on your knees, and your hips are about 4 centimeters from the table. That's it. And you're bringing both sides simultaneously towards the table and back. Do that a few times. Yeah, on your knees. Yep, that's it. Up tall. And now bring the right side of your pelvis to touch the table first. So how do you do that? If you can close your eyes, sense where does the turn happen that brings your right hip to touch the table and not the left? What do you do? Where do you turn? Somewhere in your spine. Where in your spine? What happens in your hip joints? What happens in your neck, in your head, in the knees? Does that influence the feet? And then back, and then do the same thing with the left hip coming to touch the table and the right hip staying behind. And where does that rotation happen? So you can detect the movement. Can you detect where the work is that enables that movement? Okay, and leave that. Now, bring your right foot, so you're bending your knee, and swing your left foot a little bit in, and put your right foot over the top of it's actually your right ankle over the top of the left ankle. So if you can leave your knees roughly the same width apart, but and there's a kind of a nice little nestling thing, isn't there, where your right foot can kind of nestle in that little, where the Achilles tendon is on the left. Now very gently begin to sit back as if you're going to sit on those asymmetrical eggs today. And you don't have to get there all at once. Begin that motion of sinking your pelvis as if you're going to sit on your heels. And if you need your hands on the table, that's fine. It's not a problem. It's neither here nor there, as it were, just so that you can feel safe in doing this. Next time you go to sit back, aim as if you're going to sit a little bit to the right of your heels. And then the next time you come up and you go back, aim as if you're going to sit a little bit to the left of the heels. And where does that twist happen? So you can cross your feet the other way, so the left one is on top of the right, and explore those 3 movements a little bit yourselves. It's going straight back and then going a little bit to the right and then a little bit to the left. And I think I was saying this to you yesterday as well. This is where teaching this ATM to you guys is significantly different to teaching it to the public, because they notice so little that they only need to do, in a way, a few repetitions, because then they're kind of bored because they have very few points of reference to notice. I'm making a big assumption here, Whereas you guys get really into it, and I can see you all sensing, and your attention is drifting throughout your whole body, and you're trying things, and eyes and head and all these sorts of different permutations. So the temptation for me is to let you go, on a 5-minute exploration of each individual movement, and the ATM blows out. So again, this is the difference between you and what you would see teaching this ATM to the general public. And for just a few repetitions now, pivot on your knees so that your left foot goes to the left and your right foot goes to the right, and then they come to the middle and they cross over one way, and then pivot them out again to their respective sides and then cross them the other way. So you're really kind of exaggerating the feet sliding on the toenails away from each other, both together. You can do one at a time to start with, yeah. But then, so you can just do the test if you like. And then how do you find a way that both can swing out together? And then when they swing back in, one lifts and crosses over. And then they swing away from each other again. And when they swing back in, they cross over the opposite way. This is called the knee Charleston. Leave it and rest somewhere handy. How do you find a way to rest completely and keep it handy? So it's not a big commitment to move between resting and the ATM position. And it fulfills the criteria that you need for resting. Come back to your knees in the table, if you're not all there already, and lie so that your sacrum is relatively flat, which could be a little bit in between what you would look, the two extremes you were looking at yesterday, so that your lower back is neither arched inwards or rounded backwards. Somewhat of a middle commitment, if you like. Yep. And your knees are under your hip joints. And your face is turned to the left so that your right cheek is lying on the table and your left arm is kind of curved around your head and your right arm is straight by your side. And your palm is up on the right. Your right palm is up. That's it. Now in this position, so your face is turned to the left, right cheek down. Yeah, just need a little bit more of you on the table, Helen. That's it. Begin to slowly turn your head such that your nose goes a little bit towards the table, back to where it was, and then a little bit towards the ceiling. But this might be a tiny, tiny movement. So you're rolling your head without lifting it, just rolling so that your nose goes a little bit towards the table and a little bit away from the table. Tiny, tiny movement. So there's not a lift, it's just a roll. And if you're going to make it an even movement, so the amount of movement of the nose going towards the table was the amount of movement the nose going towards the ceiling, how small would it be? Breathing. That's it. Now very gently, come back, rest, let your head rest to where it rested naturally on the right cheek. Very slightly, can you kind of unweight it so that you can slide your head a little bit to the left so that your nose is pushed more towards the left arm and then back to where you started. So it's like a translation, if you like, or a slide or a... Now, next time you slide your nose towards the left elbow, leave it there. So your nose is more in the direction of your left elbow and you leave it there. And now in this position, roll your head a little bit so the nose goes into the table and then back to where you started and more towards the ceiling, just a tiny bit each way. Leave that rolling and bring your head back to its middle position and roll your head just a few times just to satisfy yourself. Has anything changed or has it not changed? Roll your nose a little bit into the table and a little bit towards the ceiling in that middle position. So your head stays on the table and it's just as if you want to roll across the right cheek somewhere between the ear and the corner of the mouth. That's really what's rolling on the table. Just a few times in the middle position. Next time you're kind of in your sideways neutral, slightly lift up your head a little bit and slide it so that your nose goes away from your left elbow. And lower your head there. And in that position, with your nose more away from the left elbow, roll your head so that your nose goes into the table a little bit, back, and then towards the ceiling a little bit. Gently, easily. Are you breathing? If you're not breathing, breathe. If you are breathing, keep breathing. Then take your head back to the middle again and roll it just to get a sense of the influence and your relationship to the head being maybe in alignment with the spine, but maybe not. Depends on what you thought was comfortable in the first place. Roll your head a little bit in that position. Okay, now here's where we get a little bit cozy for the threesomes, is with your left arm, can you lengthen it so that it goes straight out from your side? So it's not, makes a 90 degrees. And it may be, if you might not have room to actually have the elbows straight, so at least have the upper arm straight out. The left arm. You two are going to drape it over each other's head. I'm looking at Mia and Linda. You just love each other a little bit. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so do your best. And very slowly, so that the shoulder is making a 90-degree angle out from your side. The shoulder, upper arm. You two. You, both of you. Actually, probably you need to be. Well, no, on the side, because it's like that. Yeah, 90 degrees. And just for we're only in the arm lengthen position for a minute, so don't worry too much if you can't do it. Very slowly lift your left shoulder away from the table. So the arm stays on the table, but the left shoulder lifts away. So your shoulder blade slides backwards. And your hand is maybe slid a little bit closer to you, just a tiny bit. It might not move much, but just get that sense of the left shoulder, the front of the left shoulder moving away from the table. The back of the shoulder actually goes towards the ceiling. And it might feel a bit bumpy, that movement. So make it as smooth as you can by going smaller, slower. And feel what that's like with the arm out long. And now have the left arm, so the shoulder is still at 90 degrees, but the elbow is 80, at 90 as well. So the elbow is bent, so it's like in the Egyptian position. That's it. So you've got a 90 degrees, 90 degrees. And the right arm is still long by your side. Then the left elbow is bent. And the left palm is down. That's it. And not in a push-up, if you can avoid it. Yeah. So this time, with the elbow bent, so the elbow's bent, if that's in the Egyptian position, is it possible for you to bend this elbow like that? That's it. Yep. Begin to lift your left shoulder away from the table. So the hand stays still and the left shoulder blade moves towards the ceiling. The front of the shoulder moves away from the table. And then it lowers back down again. And you're breathing. Maybe the left elbow slides a little bit, but keep the hand still, palm down. Depending on how big the movement is, whether the elbow is influenced or not. And now get a sense that the shoulder blade is moving back towards the spine. And then the shoulder comes down to the table again, and the elbow is kind of pushed away from you. As the movement gets slowly bigger, then the elbow slides towards you. And then as the shoulder comes back down towards the table, the elbow pushes away from you. And the next time it pushes away from you, keep going. Push it away a little bit more. So it's like you're getting the front of the shoulder even closer to the table, and then slide the shoulder blade back all the way towards the spine. Feel the front of the shoulder picking up and the elbow sliding towards you. And notice if it's a bit jumpy or not, it's fine. These muscles, the jumpiness, as you probably observe with your ATM classes, is muscles letting go in little spurts. So it's a really useful feedback to go a little bit slower, maybe a bit smaller, and observing how that can smooth out a little bit as your nervous system gets better at regulating the knot work. Rest a little bit, just a little pause, just in case you don't like your head turned to the left. Rest what you need to by paying attention to what is complaining, if it is. And come back to that position. So your head's facing the left, your left elbow's out from the shoulder, and there's a 90-degree angle at the shoulder, a 90-degree angle at the elbow. The left elbow, the right arm's by your side. This time, notice as you slide your elbow towards you and away from you, notice what's happening to your head. Maybe you have already. Where does your nose go as your shoulder picks up off the table and goes towards the ceiling and towards your spine? What does your nose want to do as a result of the lifting and the lowering of the front of the shoulder? So just keep sliding your elbow a little bit away from you and then a little bit towards you. And noticing the influence on your neck and on your head, where you're taking weight on the right side of your face. And next time it seems kind of congruent, if you've got the space, lengthen both arms out to the side, turn your head and adopt the Egyptian position the other way. Sort of the Egyptian position. So this will give everybody a bit of a chance to butt into each other. So now your left arm is long by your side. So the left arm is palm up. And the right arm is bent 90 degrees out away from you, and the elbow's bent 90 degrees. And you're facing the right. So you've got your left cheek on the table. That's it. So take a moment to accustom to this position a little bit. And slowly in this position, begin to slide your right elbow a little bit away from you and a little bit towards you. You can have your elbow bent. I'm trusting in your corpus callosum to swap the information. So the shoulder moves more towards the table and then back towards the spine. So away from the table, direction of the ceiling. And if that movement grows, then the elbow will slide a little bit. And you can play around with the intention of the movement. If your focus is on the shoulder picking up and going away from the table and towards the table, or if your attention is on sliding your elbow towards you and away from you, does that influence the quality of the movement? Can you play with that? and notice the influence of the head rolling, or the influence of the elbow sliding on the head rolling. So the inside of the elbow stays on the table. If you've got room, this just stays there. That's it. And then it can just slide. You can actually move a little bit because Mia's moved. Oh, she might be coming back. Yep. So you can get your arm out to 90. That's it. And then leave your arm in that 90-90 position and simply roll your head again. In this position, the nose goes a little bit towards the table. Nose goes a little bit towards the ceiling. So what happens when it's not, the head is rolling itself, or it's not being rolled by the movement of the shoulder blade? That's it. Then lift your head a little bit, take your nose a little bit more towards the right elbow and roll your head a little bit in that forward position. Well, I say forward, it's actually more to the right. And roll your head there. Do you like this more with your head forward? The nose closer to the elbow. Go back to your middle and roll a few times there. And then slide your head backwards a little bit so that your nose goes away from your right elbow, and roll your head a little bit there. Nose into the table, nose more towards the ceiling. So you're rolling somewhat on a line between your left ear and the left corner of your mouth. And what influence does that have on your shoulder, on your spine, shoulder blades? Good, leave that, bring your head back to the middle. If you need to roll your head a few times in the middle position just to satisfy that exploration, to satisfy the contrast between rolling your head in the middle part, in the forward position, in the backward position, go ahead. Now leave your head still and slide your right elbow away from you and towards you and keep your head still. So it's now like there's a bit of blue tack, and whatever part of your left cheek is resting on the table, have it blue tacked there, and your right shoulder blade is sliding back towards the spine. So your shoulder is lifting away from the table and then coming towards the table, and your elbow pushes away from you a bit more and your shoulder gets flatter on the table, and you are consciously not letting your head move. Now, for some people, this is what they would do habitually. So we're putting it in as a constraint now. So for some people, this is like, well, what's the big deal? This is what I do. You guys, not so much. And where's the work? What's the experience of holding your head still? And so you're really differentiating the shoulder blade on the chest wall by not letting the spine turn. And then let the spine turn, so let your head roll and feel the difference. And what's happening in the rest of you? So as you allow your elbow to slide towards you and away from you, and you can maybe increase the size of the movement, increase the size of your attention. What's happening in the pelvis? What's happening under each knee? And maybe you can notice, or maybe it's a contrivance, that as your elbow slides towards you, so your shoulder blade goes towards your spine, that your weight shifts a little bit onto the left knee. So your knees really need to be under your hips to feel this connection. And your pelvis is not entirely hooked onto the table like we had yesterday. So continue to initiate the movement from the shoulder and or the elbow, and broaden your attention so that as your elbow goes away from you, your weight comes more onto the two knees. As your elbow comes towards you, your weight shifts onto the left knee, and you can feel this lightening in pressure under the right knee. If your pelvis is really on the table, you won't feel that shift. And maybe if the rolling that's initiated from your shoulder and your elbow is such that, and the weight shifts to the left knee, maybe the right knee can almost pick up, and it can actually come a little bit more towards the left knee. But it's not lifting itself up. It's like the sliding of the elbow could actually shift the weight onto the left knee, and the right knee kind of is dragged towards the left knee, and then it comes back. Can you find a way to sense that connection down through your spine? And it could be the tiniest of tendencies in the right knee. Leave it and rest. Properly rest. Check in that there's no complaints in the system. Do a little inventory. Everybody's happy. Come back to the position of kneeling. And again, pay attention that your pelvis is, as we differentiated yesterday, that the weight is much more on your knees and there's not the pelvis on the table, your belly is. And have your face turned to the left and both arms in that 90-90 position. So the palms are down and both arms are up. That's it. And your hip joints are clearly over the top of your knees. And there's a little bit of space between you and your neighbor. So begin to slide your left elbow away from you and towards you. And so you're on the left cheek, on your right cheek, you've turned to the left, and your shoulder blade is moving away towards the spine and away from the spine. That's it. And at some point, can you arrange yourself so that the right knee is more in the middle of you? So it's now not so much under the right hip joint, it's a little bit more like under the pubic bone, if you like. Just find a time in the movement, then continue to slide, so both arms are up, and continue to slide the left elbow away and towards you. And notice that your left knee, as you slide your elbow towards you, encourage your pelvis to also slide to the left, to the right. So you get more weight on the right knee, less weight on the left knee, and then the weight comes back as your elbow comes back. And continue to add those things together. So there's this idea that the elbow slides towards you, the pelvis moves to the right. So it's like the pelvis and the elbow are both going to the right, and then come back and grow that movement. And the weight comes off the left knee as your pelvis goes to the right. And there's like this weird sense that you'd like to just lift that left knee up in the air. And that the back of your pelvis on the left goes more towards the ceiling, just like your shoulder blade is going more towards the ceiling. And then there's this kind of irresistible urge to lift the left leg up and put the left knee on the table. I kid you not. What would it take? Where would the rotation be? What would the weight shift be? You don't have to do it all in one fell swoop, but that would be this incredible urge to just lift the leg up and pop the inside of the left knee on the table. And actually, the thing that's lifting your knee up is the shoulder blade sliding backwards. This powerful shoulder blade and the rolling of the trunk and the rolling of the head, and that somehow bringing the shoulder blade back down towards the table pushes the left knee off the table and back down onto the floor. So that this kind of insignificant little leg is merely the puppet of the shoulder blade sliding back and the shoulder blade sliding forward. And you can clunk if you want, and you don't even have to do it. It's just this idea that you could imagine it even. It doesn't matter if you do it or not do it. As you know, this is ATM. And then next time your left knee comes to the ground, pause there for a moment and find a way to lift your head and turn it so that your left cheek is on the table and you're facing the right. And your arms are at 90-90. And now begin this exploration, but not jumping straight to the punchline. So tell the joke line by line. So the beginning is that the right elbow is sliding away from you and towards you, and it's being pulled by the shoulder blade coming towards the spine and away from the spine, and that the head is free to roll, and getting a sense of the changing pressure across the front of your chest as the movement grows in the shoulder blade, and that you're starting to roll more onto towards the left side of the chest. And as you're starting to roll to the left side of the chest, the pelvis can move a little bit to the left with it. So the right pelvis goes backwards towards the ceiling along with the shoulder blade. And you're shifting the weight onto the left knee. And maybe the left knee needs to be a little more underneath you. And then at some point, when the shoulder blade is really back towards the spine and the weight is shifted onto the left knee, and the right knee starts to lift a little bit. It's like it's picked up. It's not lifting itself, it is being lifted. It's like a puppet, and the string, the puppeteer is the shoulder blade going back. Bye-bye. And the leg just rises. And you can have whatever kind of function in mind. You could be tapping into your inner dog, and there could be a fire hydrant. I'll show you some photos. Maybe I haven't got them tomorrow. They're on my computer from Zoran. Found some great photos of kids going upstairs on their knees. Was that in your training? Maybe. Ring a bell? Find a way to use your shoulder blade to lift your right knee in the direction of the table, and then put it back down on the floor. And it's so lazy. It's like nothing. It's just this little shoulder blade that can just pick you up and put you down. Leave it and rest somewhere in the room. Come back to the position of kneeling and have your face turned to the left. And your arms 90 degrees. Kick each other a bit in the head. Poke each other's eyes. So lying on your front with your hips over your knees, and your pelvis is somewhat free. Not somewhat, your pelvis is free. Let's not kid ourselves. So your pelvis is free to slide left and right. And out of interest, just to clarify a little bit more this idea of the shoulder blade sliding, slide your left elbow away from you and toward you. So the shoulder blade goes back towards the spine. and you roll across your chest. Now, if your head is free to move, then obviously as your shoulder blade goes back, your nose goes towards the ceiling. The next time your shoulder blade goes back, do the opposite with your nose. Take your nose more towards the table. That's it. So the shoulder blade goes back, the elbow comes towards you, and the nose goes into the table. Then as your elbow goes away from you, your nose goes a little bit more towards the ceiling, but go gently, gently, gently. So this is the extra differentiation of the head and the shoulder blade from the chest. Just a few times, gently, gently, and then leave it and go back to the undifferentiated movement. So the shoulder blade going back and the head's allowed, head is free to roll with the chest. And gently go through the sequence of gradually growing the movement so that you start to feel that as the left shoulder goes backwards towards the ceiling and the weight goes onto the right knee, at some point the right knee can be a little more underneath you. Find a time when you can make that little adjustment. And then as the movement of the left shoulder going back to the ceiling grows, that the weight comes off the left knee. And then there is a time when the left shoulder blade will pick up the left knee and pop it on the table or thereabouts. And when it's on there, leave it there. And imagine that this is comfortable. Maybe it is comfortable. Imagine that this is a useful position. And in here, if it is there or if it's in your imagination, can you now slide the left knee a little bit away from you and towards you? So you're lying with the inside of your left knee on the table, and you can push the left knee along the table away from you and then pull it back towards you. So it's the analogous position to the shoulder blade, but now it's not the shoulder blade pulling you forward and backward. It's actually your pelvis pushing you away. So the pelvis is coming, the left side of the pelvis is coming towards the table, and then it's going away from the table. So the inside of the knee is sliding towards you and away from you. And does it make a difference if you think of the knee sliding towards you and pushing away from you, or that your pelvis is rolling backwards and forwards on the left? Play with that different intention. Where do you get the power and the ease? Where is breathing easier, or is it simpler? Did you forget about breathing? And then at some point in that exploration, find a way that your shoulder blade can slide back. And once again, the puppeteer is able to pick up the left leg and put it back on the floor. And settle and turn your head to the right. Begin that movement of your right elbow going away from you and towards you. At some point, find a way that your left knee can be more in the middle, ready to take the weight. And slowly, slowly grow the movement of the shoulder blade so that more and more of you rolls. Each time the right knee gets lighter and lighter, until there's a point where where the trajectory of the amplitude of the shoulder blade is such that it picks up the right pelvis and the right knee, and the right knee comes onto the table or thereabouts. And that this is a nice position and you like it, and you can rest here. You could actually go to sleep like this with your right knee up on the table. You could start snoring. And make sure that you have some weight on your left knee. That's it. So that then when you begin to push your right knee away from you and bring it towards you, you've got ground underneath you. That's it. And you can push your knee off the table. Snuggle up a bit. And slide the right knee. Feel the power of the back that pushes in the pelvis. So the back of the right side of the pelvis goes backwards and then it pushes forward. So you go flatter on the table and then you rotate off the table a little bit. You go more onto your left side and find where your power source is. Remember, whatever question we ask, the answer is always the pelvis. How do you access the power of the pelvis? And play around with the shape of your lower back. Does your lower back round or does it flatten as you're going back or as you're going forward? Try both. Then find a way to roll with the right shoulder backwards that takes the weight off the inside of the right knee, and you can just gently, slowly pop the right knee back onto the floor. Rest for a moment there. Notice your breathing, the sense of your back, whatever that means. And stand on your knees so that your knees are, and the front of your pelvis is a little bit away from the table, as it was at the beginning of the lesson. And for your immense curiosity, bring your pelvis a little bit towards the table, a little bit away. And then introduce that little rotation so that the right side of the pelvis comes to touch the table and the left doesn't. And then let's revisit one of the reference moves from yesterday. So have your toes in that pushing off position. So your toes are standing. And try the two different ways of reaching for your heels. So just the right hand and the right heel to start with. And what way do you like today? The arching backwards or the dropping backwards? And try the left side and the right side. How's that today versus yesterday? Some of you are so gung-ho, you're going for both heels at once. Why not? You've read the transcripts. Not for today, but other days. Don't feel compelled. Lovely. Leave that and come onto your feet. So standing up on your feet. and take a moment to sense the whole of you straight. And has there been any influence of channeling your inner dog? A male dog. Apparently female dogs don't pee like that. How would I know? I've never had a dog and I don't have a penis. Do they? Somebody told me that female dogs don't cock their legs. They squat. They can. Oh, the male dog taught, oh, daddy taught daughter. Right. Gotcha. So this is a learned thing. So you've all learned to cock your leg regardless of anatomy and gender. What influence does that have on your walking? Do you feel like you want to walk towards a wall and have a pee? What's the influence? A sneaky wee on the pillar. Do you want to climb up the stairs like a baby? Do you feel like you'd like to go and have a whole can of baked beans? Am I projecting here? Am I letting you into inner secrets of my... What's the functional significance of this lesson? I leave it to you guys to work out. And how about you come and lie on your mat and you use the mirror, the floor mirror, to evaluate any other clues for what this lesson may or may not be good for. Because remember, this lesson is also an FI. So why might you use this? If you were looking for a certain need in somebody, a client, what are the possible effects? Has it had an effect on your breathing? Has it had an effect on the length of your legs? On the feeling between your shoulder blades? On the opening of your chest? On the freedom of your neck? Whatever it is. It'll be different for every one of you, but they're all valid experiences that are possibilities that would give you a clue as to why you might choose this lesson for a client versus another. So you're getting a real sense that the ATMs that we teach you are giving you a repertoire of effects and influences for your ATM. About weight shifts, about breathing, about planes of action, about getting mobility in the chest, etc., etc. Actually, we could stop the training right here because all you need to do is do ATM for you to be a great FI practitioner. There. How about that? Stop the training. No more. We're not going to teach you anymore. You've got all the skills you need. They're not buying it, Jen. All right. Slowly roll over and we'll call that a lunchtime interval, which means that you could actually stay on your back and rest, or you could go and walk outside and pee on every Stoby pole. You don't have Stoby poles in Victoria. What do you have? Electricity poles. Go and pee on every pole up and down Whitehorse Road. Or you could climb the stairs on your knees. You don't bark. You gotta bark. Yeah. Just as long as you don't bite.